So here we are, episode 1, Getting There with Goz. I'm on a podcast now. 1 week ago, I was working for a radio station. Here I am on a podcast. I never was a tech guy, but I figured this thing out. And that voice you hear laughing right there is my pal,
Oh,
Brian, the closer Mariano. Now, I'll get to why closer is on with me in a second, but let me just set this up for those of you who haven't heard. I used to work for an Albany radio station. I used to work in Syracuse, and now Goz, Tom Gozlowski, however you know me. This is my first podcast venture. And in today's episode, we're going to kind of set up what the podcast is going to be for the future. For as long as I've wanted to do this, I've wanted to share stories. I want to kind of teach people about what goes on in this business, whether it's sports media, whether it's radio, whether it's television, whether it's business. When I was 18 and even younger than that, I've always wanted to be a sports broadcaster when I was 8 years old. But I always wondered, how's it happen? Who do you talk to? How do you make this thing happen? How do you get to have the greatest job in the world to be a sports broadcaster? And for other people who might listen to this podcast, maybe you don't want to be a sports broadcaster. Maybe you want to be an actor. Maybe you want to be a dancer. Maybe you want to be a business owner. That's what I want to do on this podcast. Getting There with Goz, we're going to talk to media members, athletes, coaches, local businesses, and more about how they got to where they are. The stories, the mistakes, the ups, the downs, the amazing moments. I can't wait to take this journey with you. But here we are, episode 1, where so many people in the capital region and in Syracuse have reached out to me and want to know what in the world happened. What went down at 104.5 The Team? What happened on Martin Luther King Day? I will cover everything. I'm starting from the beginning, from when I got hired, all the way to the end. Now, Closer is one of my really good friends. If you don't know, if you're from Syracuse, maybe listening from out of state listening, we built a really good friendship. He was at my wedding. He has been a part of my radio career now. We've been on many a horse together at Saratoga.
yes.
So Closer is going to be featured in episode 2, where we're going to talk about his background in Mechanicville, how he ended up in sports media, how he ended up at Albany broadcasting games and everything else. So hang with us for episode 2. He's going to be with us there. He is here for 2 reasons. One, there's going to be some times during this podcast that if you're not in media or if you're not a radio professional, I'm going to say stuff that I'm so used to saying that he may have to clarify what that actually means. There are going to be some technical terms that are used that you're going to be like, what the hell is Goz saying right now? I will pause and let Closer explain certain terms, positions, things like that. Also, the second part of this, if you know me personally, if you've grown up with me, if we've come in contact, if you've interned, if you've produced, I think I'm able to say that I'm not a negative person. I try to find the happiness and stuff. I don't know if I'd describe myself as bubbly, but I think at times that can happen. There's a different part of me when I enter a football field or a court or anything else. But I think if you know me, I'm not someone who rips people apart. I'm not someone who gets negative. That is not what this is going to be. This is not going to be the roast of Town Square Media. This is not going to be the roast of 104.5 The Team. There are going to be times where I'm probably going to get emotional during this, both sad and angry and super happy. Closer is going to be the buffer. Okay. So you're going to hear stories. Yes, you're going to do your best. I appreciate that. I'm not going to be negative. If I even get close to saying something negative about a coworker, the place I worked, Closer will stop me immediately and be like, that's not what we're doing. Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to come on here and just rip people and be like, you're the worst. I can swear on this, by the way, now. Sorry, mom and dad. You're a piece of shit. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. So if you were looking for the roast of Town Square Media or the roast of 104.5 The Team, you're sadly not going to have that happen today. That's just not my personality. I don't want to do that. I want to be professional as possible. I'm doing this for 2 reasons. One, because of a quote in a local paper, which we will get to at the end of the podcast. I prefer you don't fast forward to that. I prefer you listen to everything so you have some perspective on that.
Sit back and enjoy.
Yes. And number 2, if you are somebody like I was 25 years ago, inspiring to be a sports broadcaster, if you want to be a radio host, if you want to do something for a living, that's what this podcast is going to be about. I'm going to share stories about what went through in my journey in Albany. Coming up, I'll share about my journeys to Syracuse and college. I'm not going to come out looking pretty at the end of this. I've totally accepted that. If you think this is going to be a 45-minute love fest about how great I am, that is the least that's going to happen here. Some of my best friends, people I trust, you're going to hear stories today you've never heard before ever involving my life. Closer, hang tight for some of those. And you listening, just one more time, please, if you're doing this, tell your friends, tell your family members, rate, subscribe, download, rate, subscribe, download. It's something I'm going to get used to. I might have screwed that up on episode 1. I'm pretty sure I'm nailing this podcast stuff. There's also at times I might forget there's not a commercial break or a live read or a dump button. So hang with me. It's my first time doing non-radio in about 9 years. So I think that's a good enough intro, right, closer? Do we start this thing off?
Yeah, I think it's good, man. And obviously, for most of you, obviously, now realizing Goz and I have a very good friendship. Obviously, I did survive his wedding. Most didn't. So,
Most did it.
But yeah, obviously, I will be here to help you in episode 1, Goz, in case anything does get off the rails. If there is something that you guys don't understand that I didn't really clarify, let us know. Comment and make sure that we can actually help you through that, because obviously I've done some podcast stuff in my background as well, even when I was at 104.5 The Team, but I never have done anything like this too, where we're in the age of 2021 now, where we're on Zoom and doing different things, where now we're using StreamYard to try and not be together, but still actually be together. So any way you guys can help us out, definitely let me or Goz know.
All right, so here we go. We go into the story, the tell-all. Like Usher said, if I'm going to tell it, then I got to tell it all.
Is there a background of Burn in the background? I know you wanted to set up with this.
The only thing I have in the background, by the way, for those watching on Facebook a day later, we have my wedding pictures behind me on my shoulder. My wife will not be happy when she sees her face has been covered up by Donovan McNabb. McNabb is covering up my pictures of my poor wife. All right, enough stalling. Let's get into what everybody's here for. The meat of the story. I don't know if I count down. I guess I'm going to do it, and someone can correct me on another podcast. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we start in April 2015. So I was the morning drive host at a place called the Score 1260 in Syracuse, New York. Now, some of you are going to wonder, Goz, you're from Syracuse. You love Syracuse sports. Your family's in Syracuse. Your wife is your high school sweetheart. Why in the world did you move from Syracuse to Albany? That is for a later podcast. Go look at that. My pal Josh Murray, Bishop Grimes' own, is going to be on a podcast later on. I will explain the whole story of why I left Syracuse for Albany in another podcast. But April 2015, I'm hired at 104.5 The Team. I'm hired as the producer for the station. Let's start there. Radio term. Closer. There you go. What is a producer for those who know for a radio producer?
So producer, obviously, I was there. I was the main producer. We'll get to that at some point as well. That your job is to help the hosts set up the show, whether it's before the show even starts, setting up a rundown, and a rundown being what the show is going to look like, what topics are we going to talk about, what is going to be the main focus of today's show. And then your job behind the scenes while the show is happening is to anyone who's called in to, when Goz was on the radio, when I was on the radio, the producer's the one answering the phone to screen it to make sure that, you're not crazy or that you're going to actually call on what we're trying to talk about, and then move it over and transfer it to the host. So your job during the show, a lot more social media based and a lot more of screening calls. Before the show is more trying to make sure everybody's on the same page while you set up the topics you want to talk about in the show.
Right. So if you remember in Syracuse, I was the morning drive host. I had my own show on the air 5 days a week, every weekday, primetime slots. I'll just do that one quick. Morning drive, afternoon drive, and radio are the most people in their car and stuff like that. So I decided willingly at 25 years old to leave my dream job, which I've always wanted to do as a kid, in my hometown market to talk about my favorite teams, and leave for with no disrespect to producers, demotion. Mm-hmm. When you're going from host to producer, that is no doubt a demotion. When it came to salary, I went from a full-time employee for Cumulus Media and willingly accepted a part-time position at 104.5 The Team. I did that on my own. We'll get to that story again later on, but I did that. So I am hired by what is called, there's 2 ways you can describe this position. It's either called a program director or a brand manager. And the guy serving in that position at that time was Armin Williams, who was also serving as the afternoon drive host with our guy, Jeff Levac. Brand manager, program director, closer, kind of explain that for some people who don't know what that means.
Yeah, so brand manager is he's the boss of the station. So when Goz comes over to 104.5 The Team, Armin, who, we'll get on to future episodes as well, was one who also hired me. I was there when Goz came in, doing a different role at the station. And the brand manager is the guy who has say on anything that goes on the airways, whether it's what time slots the shows are going to be, how we're going to break up certain commercials, how we're going to basically anything that's going over the air on 104.5 The Team. Armin Williams was the guy that had the last say of what was going to happen. And if you listen to them, or you listen to Yankee games or whatever games that we had on there, Albany, Armin Williams was the guy that was making those decisions.
Armin is the absolute man. He is a passionate dude. He is programming in Houston now. He is without question a superstar in this business. Yep. If you have been fortunate enough to work with him, he oozes passion for this industry. Mm-hmm. He is somebody that if you are a young person looking for an internship, advice, to listen to tape, he will give you more feedback than you're going to know what to do with, because he has grinded. And I respect that so much. Yep. The passion he has for this business is unbelievable. So we're working together. Now, think about what's happening now. I've now taken a demotion as the producer of the show, but again, willingly taken this demotion. I've moved out to Albany. I'm leaving my friends. I'm leaving my family. I'm leaving my soon-to-be wife. And I've decided that I'm moving to Albany, and I have nowhere to live, but I have relatives here. So rather than staying at my house, making money, having my parents, helping out with rent, because I haven't moved out of my house yet because I'm 25, I've decided that I'm going to move in with my cousins who live in Guilderland, who have 3 children aged I think at that point, 9 to 17. And I'm going to sleep on an air mattress in their basement. I decided to do that. I love sports radio so much, and I wanted this opportunity so badly to work for ESPN Radio and go to a different market, that I would sleep in my mid-20s after not partying at all the bars in Syracuse. I wanted to sleep on an air mattress in a basement with a family. What am I thinking? Nonetheless, that is a decision I made because I wanted to do this so badly. So let's fast forward to about August 2015. Now, Armin and I wish we had a great relationship. We like each other now. We talked on the phone earlier this week, but we are very different people. There's nothing wrong with that. When you meet with people, you are very different. Armin is a self-described band geek from Texas, and I am a 3-sport athlete, homecoming king from upstate New York. He grinded for every single job that he's had in this business. I was given my dream job at 24. And we are both extremely passionate about this business. Now, I wanted to be a host. Armin wanted to be a brand manager. He got to be the opportunity to be a brand manager at that spot, but also was on the air. So we both are in a spot right now that we like our job. We are happy being there. But I think like any athlete, if you're a sports fan, you'd know, like, let's say you're playing wide receiver. You might be a better running back, and you want to play running back, but you're playing wide receiver. If you're at running back and you move your position, you might be better. I think Armin would admit this, and I don't put words in his mouth. I know I personally will admit this. I think if he was the brand manager and I was the host, we'd have a far better relationship, because we were both doing positions that it's kind of not what we wanted to do, but we had to do that because it's the grind of the business, and that's what happens.
Right.
So August, and while this is going on, immediately being a young, immature, mid-20-year-old kid and not being on the air anymore, and it's so something that you love to do once you start doing it. Yeah. I want to get back on the air immediately. I'm like, oh no, what am I doing? I got to get back on the air. I got friends and family members who are like, hey, what time is your show on? I got to be like, I'm not on the show. I'm on. So it was getting weird where it's like, wait. So walk me through this again. The host. Anyways, so August 2015, I want to get back to. At that time, we're only running one local programmed show. So local programmed show means they're based in Albany. Albany talks. It's not a syndicated show. Let's do that though quickly. Syndicated, if people don't know what syndicated means.
Yeah, so syndicated, if you turn on, and even this morning now where you have Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, and you listen, that is a syndicated show that is running throughout different radio stations throughout the entire country. So what happens is you'll take that show from Bristol or wherever it's broadcasting, and then you broadcast it over the frequency here in Albany. So it's on 104.5 The Team. When Levac and Goz is on the air, or at that time it was Armin and Levac, it was actually them in studio talking about stuff here in Albany. So you won't hear a lot of national topics. It was a lot of local radio. So you hear syndicated, that's coming from a different place, or maybe ESPN in Bristol, as opposed to local where you're hearing it right here in the Albany area.
Totally. So me being passionate, I want to get back on the air. And poor Armin is getting annoyed by me constantly. I got to get on the air. I got to get on the air. I got to get my own show. And him doing his best at his job, be like, how about we work on producing this show, and we'll work on, I get it, guys. Let's, and rightfully so. I can't, doing his job years later, he's totally right for everything and how we handle this.
Right.
But what happens is I have this date written down. I believe it's August 21st, August 24th, somewhere around that line. Mike Lupica is let go from ESPN New York. Now, ESPN New York at that time was airing on 104.5 The Team. Lupica's show was the lead-in to Armin and Levac.
Mhm.
So my mindset was, okay, perfect. There has now been a time slot that's been opened up on 104.5 The Team. I'm here. Andrew Williams is here. Brady Farkas is here. 2 other producers. There's 3 producers at that time working the day. I'll get with one of these guys. We'll host 1 to 3. We'll have our own show. We'll expand local programming. We'll get local businesses. So I got my pitch going. Let's go. Middays. Goz is back on the air. Let's make it happen. Unfortunately, that can't happen that easy. It's
not as easy as just flipping your fingers and you're ready to go.
Yeah, and a lot of passionate people and a lot of people who are producers see that opportunity. It's not that easy to have that happen. So I'm getting frustrated, and that's okay. Like, I want to get back on the air. I'm doing some air checks. I don't know if they're helping. I'm maybe not doing the best job I can be as a producer because I'm getting a little frustrated with everything else. But with that all being said, this is what happens next. I start getting in some arguments, and I think if you know me as a person, I'm not a very argumentative person in general. I don't start fights or anything. But there's one incident where just Armin and I started to clash. And a lot of times it was his fault or my fault. We both have different interpretations of the story. I'm not going to get negative with that because what I'm going to do is just present like a story that I completely botched. And he should have been pissed at me. And Levac should have been pissed at me. So I'll just tell one story and one argument we got into. This happens days after the Lupica thing. So American Pharaoh is going to run at Saratoga. American Pharaoh has won the Triple Crown. I'm a big horse racing fan. This is awesome. So what I decided to pitch to these guys is like, hey, they're going to do the drawing for the Travers. I think I should go live, and I can't remember the name of the business. It's somewhere in Saratoga where they had the drawing. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to broadcast. So we have the exclusive, like right when the drawing's coming out, I'm going to tell you like, all right, Pharaoh's got 7, blah, blah, blah. It's a great idea. So top 5 at 5, which is a segment on 104.5 The Team, 5 o'clock drive time. Goz is there at the place. So this is when Periscope was really big. So I decided to start Periscoping live off of my Twitter. Oh, that's a pretty cool idea. People follow Goz, social media all that stuff. My phone dies before 5 o'clock. So Armin and Levac set up the tease. They're like, all right, Goz is live from wherever we were. And then I don't even remember. It might have been Dubs, might have been Brady, Andrew Williams. Like they're calling me. And obviously my phone's dead. I have no charger. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh my God, I screwed this up so bad. I'm like, but okay, I'm fully aware how badly I screwed this up, but there's also a part of me that's so pissed that I didn't get the midday show that it's also like, I don't give a shit anymore. So that's what happens. Like, that's the mood I'm in. And I'm kind of pumped. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. So look, I go home and I charge my phone. If I'm, as I am now, and older and more mature, I hope, I would have immediately called Armin or Levac, and as soon as I could have apologized. Guys, I totally botched that. Totally on me. It's totally my fault. I didn't. So here it is, Getting There with Goz. Lesson number 1. If you screw up, just own it. Just own it. Just say like, hey, man, that's on me. I wrecked the show that day. You both should be pissed at me. I will try to do better the next time. I decided not to call him the entire night. I decided to just let it sit and wait till I got to work the next day. Armin was rightfully pissed at me. Levac actually brought a charger. And that's all he did. He just was like, just so it won't happen again. But there we go. Like, look, I'm not going to come out and say, like, I did the best selling point for me to get the midday show when I'm doing dumb stuff like that. But as you can tell, I'm a little ticked off. I'm pissed, all that stuff. All right, so let's fast forward to, I actually took some notes here. All right, got that down.
Prepared, always prepared.
I am,
right? Radio guy, ready to go.
Look at that. I'm like looking at the clock. I'm like, I went 19 minutes. Why am I not going to break at this point? What's happening? All right, so
Welcome
let's go
to the podcasting world, guys.
Right? All right, so we go to December 2015. This part is important because some stuff starts changing at this point. So it's gotten to a point after 4 months where it's some day at this point. I just go in and talk to Armin, and I'm like, and I went down the hall to an operations manager who's basically Armin's boss, and I'm like, look, I'm not making enough money to stay out here at this point. Is there any chance I could at least get a raise? I'm grinding here. Can I at least get a bump in salary? Can I get something? They're like, no, you just can't get a raise. I'm like, okay, look, I'm not going to get the show I want. I'm not going to get a raise. I took this chance to come to Albany. It's not working out. Guys, thanks. But so I walked in that day and said, hey, look, it's not working out. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to stick around for another week, and I'm probably going to be done on Friday. They said, okay, we want to talk you out of it, but if your mind's made up and you want to move on to something else, that's fine. Okay. So that Monday, I'm going to be done with the team. So this is one of the times where I'm like done. Like, I'm not going to work at 104.5 the team anymore. I'm a producer. I'm just going to leave. That Tuesday, Armin pulls me into his office and says, hey, I'm leaving for Denver. So I'm like, whoa, like, okay, man, congratulations. I'm fired up for it. I gave him a big hug. He knows what he wants to do in this business. He's getting an opportunity to go to a bigger market. So he's on his way. So I said, okay, man, you're going to hang around for a little bit. I'll fill in as I can and I'll help along the way. So the market president comes down, and we could say his name. I don't think it matters at this point, but a market president, for those who don't know, what is the market president at a radio station?
Yep. So we talked earlier about a brand manager. So a guy who just oversees one radio station. So at Town Square Media, they actually have 5 separate radio stations. So you have a market president who overlooks every aspect of what happens in those 5 radio stations, whether it's what's going on the air, any ad revenue. Basically, he's the big boss of that stations, of the group of stations, to overlook and basically run the business. So he would be the highest level of where you would go in Town Square Media in the Albany area.
Yeah, and market presidents go across the board too. It's not just Albany, it's not just Town Square. Market presidents exist everywhere in radio, right. Basically. Yeah. So he pulls me into the office, close to the door, and says, hey, I heard you're leaving. And I said, yeah, it's just not working out financially for me. He goes, what if I gave you a 33% raise today? And I'm like, yeah, I'll stay. That's cool. I'm good.
Changes real quick.
So here's what happens though. Like, you got to put yourself into my shoes here quickly. I wanted to leave the day before. I'm leaving. I'm done on Friday. Now the boss of the company locally comes down and says, I will give you a raise if you stay. So my senses are thinking this, and maybe my instincts are wrong. And there's going to be a lot of parts of this podcast where I hope you put yourself in my shoes and say, was Goz right doing this? Was Goz wrong doing this? Those questions are for you to answer. And that's what we're going to try to learn from this stuff.
Right.
My thought initially is, okay, if I've said I'm going to leave and they said, okay, and then now they're giving me a raise, that seems to be as if they want me to stay and maybe take over for Armin. That's how I took that. That's, I don't know. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll just be completely honest again. That's how this whole podcast is going to go. I thought that's what that meant. So, okay. Now, as if that's not complicated enough, about 3 weeks earlier, this is all the same week, by the way, but 3 weeks earlier, a radio station that I'm not going to say called about me for a position in the morning drive. They wanted me for the morning drive. They called about it. If you dig deep enough, you can find what that radio station is. Again, I don't want to say it because that person still has that job, and I think that's completely unfair if I said the name of the radio station, but they called and asked about it. I said, yes, I'm 100% interested. I didn't hear from them until also this week. So in 1 week, I'm quitting radio. I'm getting a raise, and another market, full-time position in morning drive wants to hire me in a significantly, not significantly bigger, but a bigger market than Albany. This all happens in a week. So Armin is aware that station has called me because they asked for a reference. So now he's in a pickle. And I don't know how we all should have handled this. Like, okay, the station is now aware that I could be leaving. So in radio, my personal opinion is that, okay, if you are having somebody leave your station, this goes for any business. Hey, we're going to have this person leave the business. We're going to promote this person within, and they also left. That would not be a good look for that station.
Right.
So I take the audition. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, you're offering me part-time in Albany, but this position could be potentially full-time and back on the air and everything else. And there's some uncertainty in Albany, but there's uncertainty with this other station too. I'm going to take the audition. I'm going to do it. So by January, I do the audition, and we're kind of on a rotation base of hosts. So I'm not on the air anymore, but it's a rotation between Andrew Williams and Brady Farkas who are hosting, and that goes on for a while. Now, I don't go on the air for about 4 months because I have the audition. What comes to happen, I have a second audition scheduled, and that host who is considering leaving decides not to leave. That position is no longer open. And as some people said, I did that the wrong way. Now, should I have told Town Square? Should I have told locally, hey, I got the audition? I already knew. Like, right. I don't know how else I should have handled that. So maybe I handled that right. Maybe I handled that wrong. To this day, again, these are some of the questions. You have to figure out how to handle these certain situations. I probably did it wrong, but I didn't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do at that point. So just for awareness here, can you explain why they wouldn't want to put me on the air for those 4 months while I'm interviewing for another company? For those who kind of get confused, like, why are you off the air if you're interviewing for another company? Why would a radio station want to take you off the air if you're interviewing somewhere else?
Yeah, so if Goz, in your case, you're interviewing for another radio station, and some, depending on how you want to look at it, would think, okay, well, he's already looking to leave, so let's try and find who our next person is going to be who's already in the building. And I think that's kind of what happened there. And then over the 4 months, it could be, again, not knowing, it could just be okay, he's already looking to leave now. Why are we going to put him in that spot if he isn't going to stay anyway? So it all depends on how certain people, you can obviously take your opinion on how you want to look at it. But again, just hearing that for the first time, because again, I was in the trenches with you for a lot of this, but some of this I'm hearing for the first time. So when I'm hearing what you're thinking, it kind of goes on of what I would have been doing too. Like, you're trying to take what is best for you in that situation, and also trying to figure out how to not would say screw over people that gave you an opportunity, but make sure you're not just trying to be a jerk about everything too, you know?
Absolutely. So basically what happens at this point, that situation is not going to happen. I'm going back to being a producer for the afternoon show. And they decide to bring in a guy named Wolf. So for those who aren't familiar with Wolf, maybe, again, you're listening in Syracuse, you're listening in an out-of-market area. If you're from the capital region, you're very familiar with Wolf. Closer, I'll let you be the capital region representative. Describe a little bit who Wolf is. And again, he might be on this podcast later on because he's got some wild stories about his life. It just fill us in a little bit for those who don't know who he is.
So Wolf is he's a character. Obviously, I was there with you too when Wolf took over, and in that situation, so he was a radio guy, but not a sports radio guy. He had the best morning show in the Albany area for the better part of 20 years.
Better than Stern. He beat Stern.
So you look at ratings and amount of people that listened, he was getting more people to listen in Albany, New York, or surrounding areas than Howard Stern was getting at the time, when Howard Stern was really blowing up. So this guy was very good on the radio, and his ability to get you to listen and make topics very interesting was one of the best, if not the best, going in morning drive time. So this is a guy that the company decided to bring in because of his background of being able to do that.
So to show how amazing Levac is as a person, Levac had interned with Wolf years previous. He did not have a good experience during that internship. And one of the first things Levac did is he told Wolf, Goz is here. Do not mess with him. Do not punk on him. Do not disrespect. And that's why Levac is the dude. I love Levac. He did not have to do that at all. He could have been just concerned about himself. He made sure, like a big brother, little brother scenario, basically put his arm around me and told Wolf, you're not messing with Goz. So Levac, I love you, man. We'll be talking about you later on here. But just one of the amazing things, Levac didn't have to do that, but went out of his way to make sure I was good with Wolf. Now, like Closer just said, Wolf has the background of more of a, rock radio, old school 90s, a little bit like that. So it's his first venture into sports. I get why the decision was made. You've got an established name in the market who's doing something different. Some of your competitors here in Albany are rock stations. If you're bringing a familiar name to the afternoon drive, it's a pretty interesting move. I would say personality-wise, Wolf would be like the entertainer, more lifestyle-based comedy guy. But what was tough about this matchup is that Levac is great at being really funny and entertaining. How they were promoting the show was like Levac was going to be more of the straight guy, which it was a very tough start to that show because, like any other radio show, it's hard in the beginning to figure out what the roles are going to be. And to make this even more difficult for Wolf, he's never done sports before, and they decide overall, by the way, there's no active brand manager at this point. There hasn't been hired. I should have said that. When Armin leaves, they haven't hired anybody yet to be the brand manager. It's an open position. Andrew Williams is basically, he leaves, I think in March. I think he left in March in 2016. So Brady stepped up. So basically a combination of producers were acting in the role of brand manager at that point. So that decision came above those guys. So Wolf and Levac are trying to find their own footing, but they expand the show to 5 hours. So in Albany, New York, with no professional sports team, with no FBS football team, they're doing a 5-hour show with someone who's never done sports before. That is an incredibly difficult task to ask of somebody who's never done it before. Now, the first show, I knew we might be in trouble. Wolf missed the names of some popular athletes, and as a producer, I'm getting calls, and I'm hearing some people getting upset that he's missing the names of professional, and that's okay. Like, it's your first show,
Right.
But sports fans are not going to give that a pass. Like, that's just not going to happen. So that's tough. So Levac, being a smart radio guy that he is, because he's worked in so many different mediums, he said, all right, I got an idea. Why don't we do this? Why don't we have Goz come in for what's called a headline segment? So if you listen to other radio shows, kind of like what's trending, water cooler. If you listen to Levac and Goz, we did headlines at the bottom of the hour. The reason why that segment was created was because Levac was smart. Says, hey, I'm really good at reacting to stories. Wolf is really good at reacting to stories. Guys, why don't you set up the story kind of like straight man style? Levac will give a take on sports. Wolf will give a take on like non-sports, like how it correlates to life, and we'll see how that works. And Levac is so smart. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Those headline segments, and I'm not stroking my own ego, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but Levac nailed it. And when I was on the air working as almost the one mic with letting those guys bounce off the two, and one mic basically means like you're the one setting up the topic. Yep. That's the best stuff Levac and Wolf had because it went to everybody's strength. I worked setting up a story that I thought would connect with people. Levac gives his sports take and what it means for the upcoming story. Wolf gives like a different take of how it could relate to the area, the community, and they worked well. Now, here's the problem, though. That's one segment. And usually in a sports radio show, how our format is set up at ESPN Radio, or was, you have 4 segments an hour. So 25% of the show is pretty good. Yeah. The other 75%, you got to figure out how you're going to piece it together. So at this time, again, I'm getting a little frustrated. You can imagine that now I'm kind of getting pushed on the air a little bit more, and I'm getting asked to do these roles. So what happens at this point, even though Levac was very aware that if like you help a little bit Wolf through this, we're going to get through this, I'm brought down to an office and I'm told, hey, we're going to cut back your hours. You're working, I think I was like 30 hours a week or something as part-time. Like, hey, we are going to cut back your hours to 25 hours a week or something like that. I think the conversation was. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like late April. So about a month after the show started. And I said, okay, that's fine. I said, here's the deal. If you cut back my hours, I just won't work here anymore. So if you decide to make that decision, I will no longer work here. Again, I'm being pretty bold at 26 years old. Like again, I told you I wasn't going to come out looking pretty in this podcast. Like, it's just in a love fest for Goz, and it's Getting There with Goz. Like, if you're young and you're listening, maybe you do some of these things, maybe you don't. Because here's what happens next. I just flat out tell them, if you're going to cut my hours, I will not work here. So much so, closer, I wrote my 2 weeks notice and sent it to him. I said, okay, here's what's happening. If you cut my hours, here's my 2 weeks notice, and let me know. Because once it goes to 25, I will not be working in this building anymore. Sure enough, my hours never moved. Mm-hmm. My hours were never cut. They stayed exactly where they were. So, again, I don't know if I handled that right or wrong, but it benefited me in the end.
Right. To piggyback off that, too, and if you're a young sports broadcaster out there and you're hearing this stuff, it might be something that you first hear and be like, whoa, like Goz is really bold for going in at such a young age to his boss's office and basically saying, okay, go ahead and cut me by 5 hours a week, and then I'm just going to quit, is a bold move. But sometimes you feel it, and a lot of us get to a point where you just have had a little bit too much. And the feeling of, I'm not really losing anything if I say, if I lose 5 hours, I'm leaving. So you might not make that same decision. I don't know if I would either, but sometimes you just get to a certain point. I think, guys, it got to that point with you in that situation.
And here's the thing, and this again, I gotta want to clarify with some things. Like, when I'm going to talk about stuff that's happening, you hear the good of me and the bad of me, and some good stuff is coming next. I was always confident that I could do this. It wasn't like one day. Like, if you play sports, all you want to do is get on the field. If you're good at basketball, get me on the court. If you're good at football, get me on the court. Let me play quarterback. Like, people transfer all the time in sports. All they want is that shot to get on the field. And I will fully admit, like, even in sports, if my coaches are listening, I was not great in practice. Like, I was a straight gamer. If you know me personally, like, there's guys on the field competing, just like, and especially not even competing with my friends, because like I can't turn it on against my friends because they're my friends. But if you are against me, it's a completely different dude. So that's all it was. Like, I just wanted to get on the field. So from May 2016 to August 2016, because I'm getting a little frustrated that I know I can do this. And now I'm on the show again and I'm killing it. Like, I know I can go somewhere and get another gig to do this. So during that 5-month window, what's that, May to August? That's like a 4-month window.
4 months, yep.
I have 6 interviews with stations around the country. 4 of the 6 are multiple professional markets. And the positions range from morning drive, afternoon drive, producer. Now, I've decided not. Yeah.
Just to cut it. So, like, as Goz mentioned previously, this market in Albany, we don't have, other than with the Valley Cats or when the Empire are around, there really aren't professional teams in this market. So when he says multi-professional market, you're looking Pittsburgh or New York or a city that has not only one professional team, but multiple ones that will. It's usually, when we look at markets and media sizes, when you have teams like that, the sporting market is much bigger.
Thank you. That's exactly right. So what happens during that time is I'm still sending my stuff out because I'm like, I think my stuff's good. Like, I think I can do this. I know I'm not bad at this. So when I hear back from 6 markets and 4 of the 6 are talking morning drive, afternoon drive, let's interview you, let's have this happen, I'm like, okay, I know I'm good at this. Like, just to like, I know I'm not awful. Like, when I'm getting calls from bigger markets that say I can do this for a living and we want to interview you and we want to have auditions, and I'm not telling people at Albany because I didn't know what to do, because I felt like back in January when they found out that I was interviewing for other positions, they may have cost me the opportunity to go to the afternoon drive. So if I tell them this time, I don't know what to do. And again, if you're a future employer, you're listening to this, like, please, like, tell me, like, did I make a mistake? Should I have told them? If I tell them, would I ever get the afternoon drive in Albany? I don't know. So I'm interviewing with a lot of markets. It's going well. I'm feeling really confident in myself. Sometimes we all need to boost. Like, sometimes when you send your stuff out, you got to be like, are you good at this or not? And hearing from bigger markets with professional sports teams, I'm like, I know I can do this if I get a chance. So this is where it gets insane. So if you thought it already was insane, it gets crazy. So September of 2016, this is closer to August. So because it's a 5-Monday month, August of 2016, and I'm part-time, the hours get a little bundled up. And what I mean by that is I'm just basically going to go over hours and I can't work a few days. I was filling in for somebody that week. Basically, I can't work. They're like, hey, you worked X amount of hours. You can't work these days. I'm like, okay, fair enough. What they don't know, and I don't know if you ever heard this story before, Closer, and there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this who've never heard this story before. And I think only my really close friends know this story, that I'm off that week. And I get a call from one of those markets and says, hey, we want you to come back. We got a position that we think is really good for you. Again, I'm not going to say the name of the station because the person's accepted the position and everything else, and it's not fair to them. But they're like, we're going to bring you in, and this is an opportunity that I think can really work for you. I said, okay. So again, I don't tell 104.5, the team, that I'm going. It is a multiple market. It's a bigger market, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I am so confident that I'm going to get this job that I bring my then girlfriend, Jordan, with me, who's just graduated from PT school. And she is interviewing for a job in that same market, and she gets the job. We are apartment shopping over the course of those few days to move to that market. That's how confident I think I'm going to land this job is. I am in the studio, okay? They put me up in a hotel room. They put us both up. They took us out to dinner. Like, they did everything we could. So my wife, Jordan, goes off and is going to sign the piece of paper that confirms she is now moving to the market. She is accepting a job. She's going. This is all set. We're going to make this happen. I'm in the studio, and I get a call, and I believe it was from Levac, or maybe the market president. I think it was from Levac. And he doesn't know, obviously, I'm there. And he goes, hey, I just want to let you know they let Wolf go today, and we want to promote you to the afternoon host on 104.5, the team. And I'm like, what? So, Closer, I'm telling you guys, this is 100% how it happened. So I am in the studio in the other market. So to this day, I don't know how this went down. To this day, I really don't know what happened. Did 104.5, the team, find out that I was in that market and I was getting ready to leave? They're like, no, we can't do this anymore. Like, we got to make the change. Let's make this happen. Is it an unbelievable coincidence that when I'm about to leave, they let Wolf go and they're going to promote me? To this day, I don't know. And I would like to believe that they knew and they valued me as an employee and wanted to promote me. That's what I'd like to believe.
Right.
There's a chance it was an incredible coincidence that I'm about to sign and leave, and just the same day he gets let go, it happens. I don't know. I really don't know. So that's what happens. So I basically have two offers, and they don't know this. I'm going to talk to the other radio station, tell them what Albany tells me, and then I'm going to get back to the other radio station and let them know. So my wife is in the meeting. She gets out. I tell her the story. She's like, I thought we're moving. I don't know what to do. I go, I can't believe this. Like, I'm in this other city. Like, it's craziness. So you can imagine what's going through my wife like there, and like my life right there. So I go back Monday. I talked to everybody because I think it was like Labor Day or something, like it was like right around September. So they give me an offer. It's significantly, I wouldn't say it's significantly better. It is, the other market says for your career, it is better to take this Albany job. I would recommend you do this. I said, okay, I'm going to take the job. Levac, to his credit, who's an amazing dude, there were people who suggested what the new show was going to be called. I don't know how many people know this. It was originally going to be called The Jeff Levac Show with Goz. On one of the old runs, I think it actually said The Jeff Levac Show with Goz. Then there was another suggestion where it was going to be The Jeff Levac Show and Friends was suggested. So like if I was ever off, somebody would just fill in for me, which I will admit I was not a fan of that idea.
Right.
And then to Levac's credit, he said, no. If he's going to be the co-host, and I've been saying to the office, like, if you're going to keep saying the show gets better with Goz on it, then just give Goz the job. Like, he was always in my corner, which in radio, I can't even begin to say how much I appreciate him. If you're going to give Goz the job, then give him the job. Like, call the show Levac and Goz. Don't give me all this other nonsense. So sure enough, they called the show Levac and Goz, and that's how Levac and Goz launched. Like, that's how it happened. Quickly as that. Just to bring one point up here, in this part, he's going to get a little radio-y, so just hang with us here. Not only am I promoted to the afternoon drive, not only am I given full time and all that stuff, I'm also assigned to be the assistant brand manager. So Steve Richards is going to step into that role as the brand manager. He's overseen a few other stations. If you're a fan of The Office, you know that scene with Dwight and Michael where he gets promoted from assistant brand manager to assistant to the brand manager, or maybe it's vice versa. That's basically what happens to me. Basically, I get promoted as well. And this part's like, legally, I got to be a little careful for this next part. In radio, if you're full-time at certain stations, you may be offered what's called an offer sheet, a contract, an agreement. I don't really want to dive into exactly what happens at Town Square. I think that's completely unfair, so I'm not going to touch on exactly how that all comes together. I think that's something for individual businesses, and no disrespect to Town Square. I just don't want to get into that. I am not offered one. I'm not offered what any other full-time employee on the air at that point in Albany is offered. I find out a few years later that I'm the only one in the building without one of those. I didn't fight for it. I thought, okay, like if I want to call U Albany basketball or I want to call college baseball, like I can do per diem. So like I didn't know what went into that, just being naive, because I don't think I'd ever signed one before. I'm like, I like doing stuff on the side. I was doing play-by-play before. I'm like, if I don't sign this, I can do my stuff on the side and get a little side hustle going. Like I just make some money. So I didn't have an agreement, offer sheet, contract, however you want to word that. I just will leave that there. It just, some people think that's really significant if you're a radio person. Other people don't care really. So that's that. So let's move on. We're going to fast forward here. March 2017. Everything's great, by the way. Like Levac and I, and by the way, when Levac was working with Armin, we were okay. Like we weren't great friends because we really didn't like have a chance to hang out and do stuff together. But when we went to that Super Bowl that year, so that's January of 2017 in Houston, I would say Levac and Goz changed completely as a show. We got to become really good friends. And someone told us, like, once you guys go to the radio together and you're with each other for 7 days, wait till you hear how different the show is. I wish we could pull the archives and listen to Levac and Goz 2016 and Levac and Goz from like February of 2017 on. Like, it's a completely different show. And I think the biggest compliment I got from people is like the chemistry between you and Levac, how well you guys work together. That's not natural. Like, I wish I could tell you it was easy out of the gates, but like that Super Bowl trip alone changed the show. And we got to like, it's so hard to be vulnerable and open up and be yourself sometimes because you don't know how people are going to take that. Levac was incredible at letting me do that and be like, you know what, guys, just whatever. Just go be yourself. I don't care. Just, you're an idiot. Just whatever. So yeah, it got really good. It's like, you know, to pat myself on the back and give a Levac love, like that's really when the show, it was okay before, but the Super Bowl changed. So March 2017, shout out to our guy, Zach By. Zach leaves. He goes off to Denver. He joins Armin, which is awesome. Zach will hopefully one day tell his story on the air and talk about how all that thing went down. It's really cool. And because Zach leaves, we get a more set up situation at 104.5 The Team. So closer, who's with me, Brian Mariano, he goes to the midday show, and he'll talk more about his story of how that all comes together later on as well in a podcast. He is now the producer of Big Board Sports with Roger Weil and Chris Honorado. I think Roger joined in like July 2016 or something like that.
Yep.
So closer's now on that show. Matt Woods now moves to our producer on Levac and Goz. So if you love Woodsy, the Twitter terrier, loyal TV, love Woods. So closer's now on the middays. Woods is on the afternoons producing. We got 2 producers. We used to have 3. Now we got 2. It's okay. So life's good, man. 104.5 The Team's clicking. Everything's going well. So this is the part of the podcast that's just going to be part 1 and part 2. So I don't know how I'm going to edit this. Maybe this gets split up. Maybe it doesn't. I'm probably not going to edit this, but I guess I'd call this like the pause section of the podcast where things are about to take a turn. If you're waiting for the dark stuff of 104.5 The Team, grab yourself a cold beer here in the next 5 minutes.